Welcome to In All Honesty, the podcast where we get real about life and all the problems that come with it. I'm Michelle Elman, and I'm that friend who we all know is a little bit too honest. You might not come to me when you get back together with your ex, but I'll be there for you when it all goes tits up. Welcome back to In All Honesty, and this week we are talking about something that has actually been requested so much, which is how do you be accountable to yourself? And I think maybe it's because I'm a Real Housewives of Beverly Hills fan and there is a person on that show that is an accountability coach. I think the word accountability is positive, but then it often comes hand in hand with the word discipline. And I hate the word discipline because it is often associated with punishing yourself, being mean to yourself, and self-hatred. If you think about any time discipline is used, especially in the context of fitness and exercise, it is always about being mean to yourself. And less so, it's about sticking to routine. But the moment you fail, the moment you don't stick perfectly to the thing that you set out to do, that idea of discipline is you being horrible to yourself inside your head. So how can you be accountable to yourself without that aspect? Well, we focus on the aspect of it that comes from a place of self-love. And here is what I believe. If you are a person who loves yourself, you keep your promises, not just to yourself, but to the people around you. And another thing that people who love themselves do is they say what they mean and they mean what they say. Another thing that people who love themselves do is they follow through. And so when you look at it from that point of view, you're coming at it from an angle of loving yourself. Whereas when you talk about discipline or even sometimes accountability, think about how you talk about disciplining a child. It's a very negative connotation from the get. It's about telling someone off or berating someone for not doing something. And as I have said multiple times, if you've ever heard about the white bear phenomenon, it's telling someone to not think of a white bear. The first thing you do is think of a white bear. So telling someone, when you're talking about discipline and we're talking about not keeping up with the routine and what the discipline is when you don't want to keep up with the routine, all of that stuff leads to a punishing, deprivation, being mean to yourself. And if I think about anything that I've ever succeeded at, when I use discipline, it's basically trying to strong arm yourself there. And when you do that, it's only a matter of time before you don't have enough energy. So if you think about like strong arming in the literal sense, and you're trying to push yourself through to a workout, there is a point when you're just going to fall on the treadmill rather than being like, oh, my body's really tired today. I should probably listen to that. Let's be a little bit more flexible. So one of the main things I have in my life around accountability is I make rules. Yes, like everyone else, they have goals and all of that, but rules with flexibility. And the overriding thing that is different when you come from accountability from a loving standpoint is that my body is king. My body will tell me more than any other goal I have. I might have the goal of working out 3 times a week, but if my body says no, my body says no, and I am still winning and I am still a success. I am even more of a success to listen to my body. And I think that's where, if we have this very rigid structure or we make very rigid goals, especially when we make unrealistic goals and very high aiming goals, it means that you're destined to failure. But also we create this binary between success and failure where you aren't able to live up to it. And continuing to use exercise as this example, let's say you want to lose a certain amount of weight this week. This is why it is silly when someone sets a goal like, I'm going to lose 5 pounds. That's your body. That's completely out of your control. You can work out 2 more times this week than you did last week, and you will still see yourself as a failure because you've put yourself in this binary of pass and fail. And by not achieving that goal, you feel like a failure, even though you can look at that week and go, but I worked out 2 more times than I did last week. You've not actually made the goal the thing that you want to measure, which is an improvement in health, let's say, or an improvement in fitness. Like, actually make goal according to the thing you can do. Now, when it comes to self-loving standpoint, when you have a smaller goal, so for example, when I first started working out, my only goal was to go to the gym 3 times a week. That meant, very literally, I could walk to the gym and walk home. There were times I would walk to the gym, swipe my card, walk through the turnstile, and walk back out. There were times I walked to the gym with one trainer in my bag because I knew I had no intention of staying. Now, what would happen more often is by the time I would get there, I'd be like, oh, well, I might as well just go on the treadmill for 5 minutes. And then by the time I was on the treadmill for 5 minutes, I would bump into a friend, have a chat, and then she was doing some exercise and I'd join her to do that exercise. And that's where you win on the smallest level. But also, someone who loves themselves, as I said, follows through and keeps their commitment. And so when I put things in my diary, like seeing my PT, I see it like a meeting. So even if it's me going to the gym by myself, I don't question my meetings when I block it into a diary. The meeting is in there, the meeting is booked. You then don't think about it. Another analogy I can use is when you order something online, you don't sit by your door and wait for the parcel to arrive. You know it's coming. You have a date for when it's coming. You leave it alone. And then if it doesn't come by that date, then you check up on it. But in the same way, part of why you don't stick to what you say you're going to do, and this could be something like, I'm not going to text my ex. You then entertain it in your head. You've already made the decision though. I'm not going to text my ex. And then you spend the next week going, should I text my ex? Maybe I'll text my ex. What if I text my ex this? Oh, I could text my ex that. The talking about it in your head endlessly, that makes the decision hard. That is the waste of energy. That is the waste of commitment. And the funny thing about saying what you mean and meaning what you say is the more you do it, the better you get at it. And then you become a person who is reliable to your word. And this is where the self-esteem chip comes in. Because when someone can count on you, it's that whole thing of your word being your bond. It's about your words mattering. And then also acknowledge about yourself of not committing to things that you know you aren't going to stick to. And this could be something as simple as, you know, when you bump into someone in the street and you haven't seen them in ages, and then you're like, we should go for a coffee. Stop saying that shit. Stop saying it if you don't mean it. Stop saying it if you never intended to go for the coffee. The only time I will actually say to someone, we should go for a coffee, actually wanted to go for a coffee with them. Trying to make everything that comes out of your mouth as true as possible. And this might sound extreme, but it will stop you from saying things for the sake of it. It will stop you from saying things by being a people pleaser. And also, you can start trusting yourself. So when someone says to you, like, oh, are you going to text your ex? You don't actually go, no, I'm not going to text my ex. You could go, I don't know, it's something I'm struggling with right now. It is better to be honest and set the bar lower than to say something absolute like I'm never going to text my ex and knowing you're going to do it in 2 weeks. That is when your friends will get frustrated with you. If you say you're going to turn up to their birthday party and then the day of the birthday party you cancel, rather than 2 weeks out you saying, hey, look, I'm already looking at my diary on the day of your birthday. I really want to come. But realistically, I know how much podcast recording takes up my energy. And by the time I get to 6 p.m., I can barely have a conversation. So one, I'm not sure that I'm going to be a great party guest. I don't think I'm going to be great at holding a conversation. And also, I'm worried I'm going to get to that point in the night and then just not be able to come. Is it okay if I let you know closer to the time? Do you see where accountability is such a broad topic and it's always about actually saying and following through on the words you say? So if you have to make the goal smaller, make the goal smaller. In that way, I think you are actually being more honest with yourself, but also you actually amplify your self-mastery and self-knowledge. So for example, if I'm talking to my life coach and my life coach is telling me either to do or not do something, and yes, that's how life coaching differs. That's why I prefer life coaching, because I understand within traditional psychology, you aren't meant to tell people what to do. There are times my life coach will tell me what to do, and I will say, look, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not doing that. Or I'll be like, I will do it if I have enough time. But the chances are I'm going to speak to you in a week today and I will not have done it. I know who I am and I know when she's suggesting something, whether I'm going to follow through or not. And pretty much all of the things she's suggesting are going to help me. And yet I know myself well enough that sometimes, like other humans, I will wait until the pain is greater to address it. So I remember, for example, one week her being like, so one of my main goals at the beginning of the year was to get better around money. And she was like, you need to find a new accountant. And I was like, look, I'm going to be real with you. That is not a priority this month. I am too stressed. And the idea of putting one more thing on my plate. And she was like, right, I'm not dropping it though. And I was like, yeah, don't drop it. You can bring it up next month. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that by next week, I'm going to find a new accountant when I know for a fact I'm not going to make time for it. I'm not prioritizing it. And frankly, I'm still too scared. I mean, changing accountants and changing teams is one of my most terrifying things. I hate it. I hate changing management. I hate changing literary agents, all of it. So I knew that there was a lot of resistance, and it wasn't just the practical thing of changing accountants. It was like having to fire my old accountant, having to hire my new accountant, having to take all the meetings to find the new accountant, all of these things. But by knowing myself, I didn't lie to her, and I didn't make a commitment to her that I had no plans following through on. And ultimately, all of this was for the betterment of my own life. And to my life coach, she actually doesn't care whether I do it or not. The only person it's impacting is me. But it mattered to me that I wasn't going to say I was going to do something if there was no aspect of me that knew that was true. So before I commit to things, I almost do a check. And this is a very much life coaching thing. You do a head, gut, and heart check. Does my head want to change accountants? Does my heart want to change accountants? Does my gut want to change accountants? Am I going to change accountants this week? Literally, like, I remember in that moment, my gut just being like, not now, I'm overwhelmed, I cannot do this. So that's what I responded with. And it's about, if you have to pause and take a moment and tell someone, can I have some time to think about it? Actually saying that. Rather than the word try, one of the things that as a life coach you also try to get rid of is like, oh, I'll try to change my accountant this week. If you try to do something, embedded in that word is failure. So rather than trying, ask for more time. Say something like, can I just get back to you by the end of the week on that? I'm not sure right now, but I'll let you know. And I literally just did that. Someone asked me to attend an event, and I was like, oh, it's an event I would really like to go to, but it's also one of those events that if I was too tired, I would end up bailing on. So I told her that. I was like, hey, can I let you know? Rather than saying, I'm coming to your event and then being a person who bails. You don't want to get a reputation for being an unreliable person. And so being accountable to not just yourself, but the people in your life and the things you say you're going to do also helps with that. It's also about the fact that one of my pet peeves, especially in work stuff, is when I ask someone to do something, I assume they're actually going to do it. Having to then go back to them and be like, hey, have you done that thing? Is such a waste of time on both ends. And so that's where within your career, it also benefits you to be a more accountable person. Because if it means you tell someone you're going to go do something, write it down on a piece of paper if you have a rubbish memory. Actually be a person who then follows through. It will make your life so much simpler. Becoming a person who says what they mean and means what they say will cut out so much faff. It will cut out so much drama. And also you will get a better reputation for being an efficient person. Nearly every person I have worked with who is within management has made a comment on my efficiency because I do things when I say I'm going to do them, and they don't have to follow me up. They don't have to chase it. And I remember one manager even saying to me, you know, I have to remind my talent on the day of an event that that event is taking place. And I just went like, sorry, do they not own a diary? That sounds like such a monumental waste of time on both ends. So when we talk about accountability, I want you to look at all areas of your life. I've mentioned health and fitness. I've mentioned your career. I've mentioned your personal life. All of this works within each other, but also the knock-on effect of becoming an accountable person will transform your life. I'm going to get into more practical ways that you can implement this after the break. But first, the message of this week.
My question is, I have a friend who is frequently depressed or highly anxious. I've tried to be as empathic as possible, but at times it can feel draining and I don't know what else to say to her. What can I do to help?
Thank you so much for your message. It can feel really horrible when someone in your life is going through a lot of pain and you feel a little bit helpless and powerless in how to help around that situation. And in your message, you also mentioned something about emotional vampires. And I also understand that it takes a lot of energy to be someone's support in a situation like that. This is where it's important to recognize that it is really difficult to help someone when they are in a place where they can't help themselves. And I don't know what you've tried thus far, but one of the things I would do is I would tell the person that you are always there to support, and also recognize that you aren't their therapist. And a lot of people need that external professional advice because it is not the same. I remember I see all these memes online of being like, you don't need a therapist because you've got us. It's not the same thing. People are qualified in being able to help people with anxiety and depression because you have to get trained in it. So yes, you can be there as a support, as a friend, but it is not your responsibility to help improve their situation or change it And yes, be kind, compassionate, empathetic. But at the same time, it can feel like a lot of responsibility when you don't have any more answers than they do. And so maybe it's showing up, being at their apartment, spending more time with them. It could be giving them grace when they aren't turning up or they aren't showing up for you. Or it could also be this conversation of like, I've tried to help as much as I can. And ultimately, I'm not sure I can help anymore in this situation. In my new book, Bad Friend, I have a chapter on mental health difficulties. And why I guess I'm hesitating on answering this question fully is because it required a full chapter. And within that chapter, I talk about when I was the friend who had mental health difficulties, when I was going through PTSD, I lost 3 friends. And I take a lot of blame in those situations because I was not being my best self. And also being the friend who actually ended a friendship because their mental health had started impacting mine. And this is where it's so important within friendship to have those boundaries of knowing what is you and what is me. And as much as you can support and be a helping hand, taking on someone else's mental health issues can be a heavy burden in that context. There needs to come a line where you are looking after yourself. I know that is the more harsh line to take, and I know it will be stigmatized to say that because I'm very aware of the fact that we are living in a culture right now that has weaponized and used the term boundaries to cut everyone off, and we are living in such a culture of individualism, and I'm trying to push back against that as someone who was on the train of the boundaries train. I mean, I was one of the first people talking about the importance of boundaries. The Joy of Being Selfish was one of the first books out there on boundaries. It is a word that everyone knows now, but like 5 years ago, it was not. I am aware that I have likely probably contributed to this culture of individualism, of like, you need to look after yourself and fuck everyone else. And I don't believe that. But I do think it's a hard conversation to have because there has to come a point where if you tie yourself to each other, you're both going down. And that's no help to anyone either. And so, yes, absolutely, have more grace for each other. But also, someone who is going through anxiety and depression needs an entire support network around them. It cannot lie on one person, and it being one person's responsibility, which tends to happen because that person tends to isolate, but also probably has had, like I did when I had PTSD, has had moments or friction with friends and people in their life where there are less people in their life. And so getting your friend into more community making events, helping them in that aspect of getting to know more people helps spread it, because like ultimately why a support network is in place is because there will be times your friends are going through a really rough time, but there will be times you're going through a rough time at the same time as well. And so you need all of your time and energy to look after yourself, and therefore you can't be there for someone else. And so it's all about that grace and understanding. And as I said, like I'm very aware of this like very individualistic culture, and what I'm really trying to push in my friendship book is like there will be times where friendship is inconvenient, and also there has to be a point in time when you have your own boundaries and you set those limits of what you're capable of. And for every person, those limits are going to be different and changing. But I think when someone's going through mental health, it is again that message of accountability. If you say you're going to show up and you're going to be there, then actually do that. And it will matter more to a person who is going through a rough mental health or difficult headspace at that moment. But it's a tough one, and I'm sending you a lot of love and compassion. And I hope that chapter in my new book also helps, because it is such a complex and nuanced subject that it is hard to do justice for both sides of the equation, having been on both sides of the equation. I hope that helps, and I'm sending you lots of love as well. So in terms of accountability, the first step to start is when you say things and you notice they are untrue and they come out of your mouth, retract it. You can literally say something like, I don't know why I said that. The truth is, or, oh, sorry, I'm not really thinking right now. And then actually say what you meant. So it could be something like, yeah, I'll get that to you by Monday. Wait, sorry, I don't know why I said that. On Monday, I'm at an event. I'll get that to you on Wednesday. That is accountability. Saying to someone, hey, that's an unrealistic deadline. I just don't think we're going to be able to achieve that. I'm out of the country next week, so there is no way you're going to be able to receive that by that point. The reason why we don't have those conversations is because we're worried about the response. We're worried about the anger we're going to receive or people being annoyed at us. But when you tell people last minute, or you make that commitment and hope they don't notice when the date rolls around, that is when people become more annoyed, because people have their own calendars. They are trying to figure out things around your timings and your schedules, and letting someone know last minute, whether it's a work thing and they're depending on your piece of work to do their piece of work, or whether it's a social thing and you're telling someone you're coming to their dinner party and now they have an empty space and have made more food for one person who's not showing up. All of those things then have a knock-on effect. And I think if you start viewing it as promises to yourself, and that you have enough respect for yourself to honor your commitments and honor your promises to yourself, it means that you stop this questioning and this entertaining this idea inside of your head. Because honestly, every time I have spent a day going, should I go to should I not go to the gym? Like, if I do that all day, I don't go to the gym. If I go, I'm going to the gym at 6 o'clock, and then I leave it alone all day, I go about my day, and then 6 o'clock hits, I will go to the gym. It's that entertaining it, meaning that you're entering this possibility of not following through that actually leads to you not following through. So I hope that helped. It is a habit that takes time. I have become an accountable person to myself, and it has taken 10 years. I started working with my life coach 10 years ago, and it was one of the first things she taught me. There is an amazing book that talks about this called The Four Agreements, A Practical Guide to Personal Freedom. And one of the agreements is about committing to yourself, and your word is your bond. And it is by Don Miguel Ruiz. So get that book. It's a very tiny book. So I wouldn't get it as an audiobook, but you can get it as an ebook. It will honestly take you 20 minutes to read it, but it's one I come back to time and time again. It really articulates it better than I could have done today. And as always, I am going to end the episode with something I am working on and learning. 2 days ago, I lost my temper with a friend. I was having a really bad day, and I have not lost my temper in about 3 years. So it happens very rarely. And I've said in a previous episode, I used to have a big temper. And when I say I lost my temper, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't name call. So it was also a massive improvement. But I did say things not consciously, and I didn't respond to what was being said. I reacted to what was being said, and it just was not productive conversation. And there is a part of me that is really proud of, like, this was the worst conversation I've probably had in 3 years. That was like, oh wow, that's the worst conversation you've had in 3 years? But you didn't raise your voice, you didn't yell, you didn't name call, things that actually I did do when I was like 15 years old. And also there's a part of me that isn't proud of how that communication went down. I think both parties end up, without meaning to, left more hurt and with more issues than entering the conversation. And as I mentioned in the episode on conflict, like, I'm not a perfect human being. I mess up all the time. I just try to apologize when I mess up. And today is the day I've decided I'm going to confront it. I've left it for 3 days to let it cool off. And yeah, today is the day I have to like sit down and actually try to have this conversation again. And I think I'm going to lead with what I told you in the conflict episode of like, hey, I'm really sorry about the conversation a few days ago. It's not how I wanted it to happen, and I'm not proud of my part in it. And can we try this again? I hope that it will be met with kindness. I'm quite nervous about it. But this is just to show you that, like, I am a human before I am a life coach, and it was a really upsetting conversation, and it happened on the anniversary of my breakup. And so part of why I was hurt was the fact that it took place that day when everyone knew what everyone in my personal life knew what that day was to be, and it was already a hard enough day, and it felt hurtful that it felt hurtful that it was another thing to add to my plate on that day. But I'm going to address it, and something I'm learning is just because you have a slip up doesn't mean that your healing is not absent. It doesn't mean that I'm back to square one, because as I said, I didn't go back to square one. I slipped backwards a little bit, but you can have moments where you're not proud of your behavior. And I think because one of my core values in life is to always be proud of how I speak and my interaction and my side of the street, no matter how anyone else behaves. And I hope you saw that in my breakup of like, it's not what they deserve, it's more who I am and my morals and my values, that I still live by that. And if you mess up, you can just apologize and try to mend it in a more productive way. So that is the thing I'm learning right now, to give everyone a little bit more grace and figure your shit out. And you can't avoid it, because when you avoid things, things get worse. So I do think it's smart to give a few days cooling down period. Don't leave it too long. Address the elephant in the room and try again. Because sometimes we just need to hit that reset button, give Thank you so much for listening, and I will be back next Tuesday.